Blood runs over the stones of the Appian Way. 6,000 bodies hang from crosses, stretching as far as the eye can see. The smell of death fills Rome. But this is not a victory. This is fear. Because the man who made this massacre possible was not a Roman general. He was a slave, and his name terrified the most powerful empire in history. Spartacus. You were taught that Rome was invincible. You were told its legions never knew defeat. They lied. Because there was a moment when Rome trembled. A moment when senators could not sleep. A moment when Roman mothers hid their children and whispered in the dark the name of a Thracian gladiator who turned slaves into warriors and gladiators into legends. This is the story that Rome tried to erase. The story of how one man came close to destroying an empire. But let's start at the beginning, at the place where true horror is born. Capua, Italy, 73 years before Christ. In this city, there exists a place that the Romans prefer not to mention. A place where the bloodiest entertainment of the empire is manufactured. The gladiator school of Lentulus Batiatus. Imagine this place. It is not a training camp. It is a prison. The men here are not soldiers. They are merchandise, flesh destined to die in the sand, so that Roman citizens can applaud while devouring grapes. 78 men live shackled in underground cells. They barely receive food. The beatings are constant. The training is brutal. Because a gladiator must learn to kill or die, there is no third option. Among these men, there is one who is different, tall, muscular, with scars that tell stories of battles that Rome prefers to forget. His name is Spartacus. He is Thracian, a warrior people from the north that Rome conquered with fire and betrayal. Spartacus was not born a slave. He was a soldier. Some say he fought alongside the Romans. Others say he fought against them. What nobody disputes is this: the man knows how to win a war. And now he is chained, forced to fight for entertainment, forced to kill other slaves while the Romans bet on who will die first. But Spartacus does not accept this fate, and he is not alone. By his side are others: Crixus, a Gaul with an explosive temperament; Oenomaus, a German warrior of immense strength; Gannicus, a Celt whose sword skills are almost supernatural. These men are not friends. They are enemies forced to coexist, but they all share something: absolute hatred for Rome. One night, in the depths of the gladiator school, Spartacus makes a decision. He is not going to die in the sand. He is not going to be entertainment. He is going to do something that no slave has dared to do in the history of Rome. He is going to rebel, but he cannot do it alone. He needs to convince the others, broken men, defeated men, men who have forgotten what it means to be free. The conversation happens in whispers, among the shadows, while the guards sleep drunkenly above. Spartacus does not promise victory. He does not promise wealth. He promises something more valuable. He promises to die as free men instead of living as chained beasts. And 78 slaves say yes. The plan is simple and brutal. During a dinner in the school, when the guards are distracted, the gladiators attack. They have no weapons. They use what they find: kitchen knives, chains, their own hands. The violence is immediate. The guards fall before they can scream. Blood stains the corridors of the school. The slaves take the keys. They open the cells. And for the first time in years, they breathe free air. But here is where the story becomes unbelievable. Because these 78 men do not flee. They do not hide. They do something that Rome could never have imagined. They stay, and they begin to recruit. Spartacus understands something fundamental. A small group of fugitive slaves will be hunted in days. But an army of slaves can change history. And in Italy, there are millions of slaves. Men and women torn from their lands, separated from their families, forced to work until they die in the fields, in the mines, in the houses of the Roman patricians, all waiting for an opportunity, a sign, a leader. Spartacus becomes that sign. The 78 become hundreds. The hundreds become thousands. Slaves from all the regions conquered by Rome join the rebellion. Gauls, Germans, Thracians, Greeks, Africans, an army born from suffering, an army that has nothing to lose. And Rome realizes too late what is happening. Because when they finally send troops to crush this slave rebellion, they discover something terrifying. These are not disorganized slaves. They are warriors, trained, disciplined, led by someone who understands war better than many Roman generals. The first battle is a massacre, but not for the slaves. For the Romans, the legions fall, the officers flee. And for the first time in the history of the empire, Rome experiences something unknown: panic. Because what comes next is not just a victory, it is a humiliation. Spartacus does not settle for escape. He does not seek to hide in the mountains like a common fugitive. He understands something that Rome never thought a slave could understand. Power is not begged, it is seized, and he begins to seize it. The legions sent to suppress the rebellion fall one after another. These are not minor defeats. They are total annihilations. Roman generals with decades of experience are outmatched in strategy by a man who was supposedly nothing more than meat for the amphitheater. Spartacus divides his forces. He attacks from multiple flanks. He uses the terrain as a weapon. He turns every mountain, every valley, every river into a deadly trap for the Roman troops. And the most brutal part is that he does it with their own tactics. The same military strategies that Rome used to conquer the known world are now turned against her. Imagine the scene. Roman legionaries, the most feared soldiers of the ancient world, fleeing in terror from men who days before were not even considered human. Slaves donning the armor of their former masters, wielding their swords, using their standards as war trophies. It is more than a military rebellion. It is an existential insult to everything Rome represents. Because Rome was built on a simple and brutal idea. Some are born to lead, others are born to obey. And that difference is sacred, immutable, ordered by the gods themselves. Spartacus shatters that idea with every victory. He shows that a slave can be a better strategist than a consul, that a gladiator can lead better than a patrician, that the so-called barbarians can defeat the most powerful civilization on earth. And terror spreads throughout Italy. Cities lock their doors. The wealthy flee north. Trade routes grind to a halt, because nobody knows where Spartacus will strike next. The slave army grows to numbers that historians still debate. Some speak of 70,000, others of 120,000. What is certain is that it becomes one of the largest military forces Italy has ever seen. And here is where the story becomes more complex, more human, more tragic, because Spartacus has a decision to make, a decision that will define his legacy and the fate of all who follow him. He can march on Rome, destroy the heart of the empire, burn the Senate, execute the patricians, become the man who achieved the impossible. Or he can do what he originally planned, cross the Alps, lead his army north, to freedom, to lands where Rome has no power, where every man can return home. Ancient sources tell us that Spartacus chose freedom, that his goal was never to conquer Rome, but to escape from it. But his army does not agree. Because after tasting victory, after seeing the Romans kneel, after sacking entire cities and taking everything Rome robbed from them for years, many of his followers want more. They want revenge. They want glory. They want Rome to pay in blood for every lash, every humiliation, every child torn from his mother's arms to be sold in the slave market. And here begins the fracture. Crixus, one of the Gallic leaders of the rebellion, breaks away with 30,000 men. He refuses to follow Spartacus north. He wants to stay. He wants to keep pillaging. He wants to keep killing Romans. It is the first crack in an army that seemed invincible. And Rome notices. Because now the Senate understands that this is not just a slave uprising. It is a civil war. It is an existential threat that could destroy the Republic from within. They send Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, a ruthless general with unlimited resources and a reputation to defend. Crassus does not make the mistakes of previous generals. He does not underestimate Spartacus. He does not unnecessarily divide his forces. And he does something that no Roman commander has done before. He revives an ancient and brutal punishment called decimation. When his own troops show cowardice in the face of the rebel slaves, Crassus divides them into groups of 10. And in each group, 9 soldiers must execute the 10th, chosen at random. It does not matter if he was brave or cowardly. It is a lesson, a message. Fear your general more than the enemy, and it works. Crassus's legions harden. They become brutal, because now they fight with 2 terrors. The terror of facing Spartacus, and the terror of disappointing Crassus. Meanwhile, Crixus and his 30,000 are massacred, ambushed by the Roman legions in southern Italy, annihilated to the last man. Spartacus organizes funeral games, but not Roman games. He forces Roman prisoners to fight as gladiators. He makes them die for the entertainment of the slaves. It is a devastating symbolic act, a total inversion of the social order. But it is also a warning, because now Spartacus knows that time is running out, that Rome has awakened, that Crassus is not like the other generals. He tries once again to lead his army north, to the Alps, to freedom. But something changes. Some say that the Cilician pirates who promised to transport them across the sea betrayed the deal. Others say that his own army refused to follow him. What we know for certain is that Spartacus ends up trapped in the southern tip of Italy, cornered, with Crassus building a massive wall from coast to coast to contain him. A wall of 50 kilometers, trenches, stakes, watchtower. Spartacus is trapped at the tip of the Italian boot like an animal in a cage, and Crassus's legions wait, patient, knowing that hunger will do what swords could not. But Spartacus still has one final trick. On a dark night, when the flames of Crassus's campfires light the horizon like the eyes of 1,000 demons, Spartacus makes his final decision. He is not going to die of hunger. He is not going to wait for time to devour him. He is not going to allow Rome to see him weak. He orders his men to gather everything they can use as a bridge: wood, soil, animal corpses, anything, and in the silence of dawn, they break Crassus's wall. Imagine the scene. 60,000 slaves charging against the most powerful fortifications Rome had ever built. The sound of metal against metal, war cries in 20 different languages. The smoke, the blood, the chaos. They manage to break through, but they are exhausted, starving, and Crassus is no longer alone. Pompeius the Great returns from the north with his legions. Lucullus comes from the east. Rome closes the circle from all angles. Spartacus realizes that there is no escape, that this is the final battle. Some of his generals desert. They try to negotiate with Rome, but Crassus does not negotiate with slaves. He crucifies them all, and then the final day arrives. The year 71 before Christ. Somewhere in southern Italy, whose exact name has been deliberately lost to history, because Rome does not want a sacred place for the rebels to exist. It does not want martyrs. It does not want monuments. Spartacus assembles his army for the last time. He knows he cannot win, but he can choose how to die. Sources say that before the battle, he kills his own horse. He spears it in front of all his men. When asked why, he gives a devastating response. If we win, I will have all the horses of Rome. If we lose, I will not need any. It is the gesture of a man who has already accepted his fate, but who is going to exact the highest price possible from his executioners? The battle is a massacre. The Roman legions advance like a perfect machine. The slaves fight with the desperation of those who have nothing to lose. Spartacus fights on the front lines, trying to forge a path to Crassus, wanting to end this face-to-face. General against gladiator, master against slave. They say he killed 2 centurions with his own hands, that he advanced meters and meters, leaving a trail of Roman bodies behind. But the wounds accumulate. A spear in the thigh, a sword in the side, another in the back, and finally he falls, surrounded by enemies, covered in his own blood and that of others, but on his knees, before no one. When they find his body, it is so mutilated that they can hardly recognize it. Rome never officially admitted how many soldiers were lost that day, but we know it was thousands. 60,000 slaves died in that battle. The 6,000 who survived were crucified along the Appian Way. From Capua to Rome, a corpse every 40 meters for almost 200 kilometers, a forest of crosses, a monument to terror. Crassus wanted to send a message. He wanted every slave who walked that route to see what happens to those who rebel. But he achieved the opposite. Because those crosses did not speak of victory, they spoke of fear. Fear that another Spartacus might rise. Fear that history might repeat itself. Fear that the system supporting your empire is more fragile than you thought. The body of Spartacus was never found. Either Rome hid it, or his own men took it to some secret place, because symbols matter. And a slave who defied the most powerful empire in the world cannot have a grave. But his name survived. Through the centuries, through empires that fell, through revolutions that changed the world, every time someone rises against injustice, every time the oppressed say enough, every time someone chooses dignity over survival, there is Spartacus, not as a myth, not as a fantasy, but as proof that power has limits, that systems of oppression eventually break, that history is written by the victors, but remembered by the brave. If this story moved you, if you felt something when hearing how a nameless man became legend, then share it. Because these are the stories that were taken from us, the truths they tried to bury, and they deserve to be told over and over until no one forgets them.